Hello, and welcome back to The Exchange, a podcast featuring real stories, real people, and real purpose. I'm your host, Ruby Jones, and today we're taking a closer look at a production that has moved audiences around the world with its raw honesty and unforgettable score. Next to Normal, now playing at Denver Center for the Performing Arts, has won 3 Tony Awards and a Pulitzer Prize for Drama. The musical explores the complexities of mental health, family, and what it means to find our way forward as life takes unexpected and unsettling turns. At the center of the story is Diana Goodman, a woman navigating the fragile balance between love, memory, and survival. Joining me today is Aléna Watters, who grew up in Colorado and now boasts an extensive Broadway resume and a career spanning some of the most celebrated productions in theater. She brings depth and nuance to a character that resonates deeply with audiences, and I'm excited to share our conversation about her life experiences and her ability to bring Diana to life in such a bold and expressive way. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with me today. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to dive in.
Well, you are in the starring role in Next to Normal, which is playing at Denver Center for Performing Arts in the beautiful Wolf Theater. For anyone who is not familiar with the storyline and is on the fence about whether to go see Next to Normal, would you tell me a little about what the production is about?
Next to Normal is a Tony Award and Pulitzer Prize winning musical drama written by Brian Yorkie with music by Tom Kitt. And it is a raw, honest exploration of mental health issues and the toll it can take on families. And it's centered around a suburban family and a mother, Diana Goodman, the role that I get to portray in this production at DCPA, who's been dealing with bipolar disorder with delusional episodes brought on by some deeply seated, unprocessed grief, and the impact of the family doing their best to deal with the situation in their own ways. And again, it's raw, it's an emotional story, and it addresses bipolar disorder, grief, the limitations of modern psychiatry, and it normalizes that life is messy and we're all doing the best that we can.
That's a great description, and you are not exaggerating when you say it's raw. I was surprised by how you showed up as Diana and the emotional depth that you brought to the character. Can you tell me a little about how you prepared to play that role?
Yeah. Well, Diana's a complex character, and to prepare for the emotional weight this role carries, I am sure to connect with my nearly decade-long practice of 15 to 30-minute sittings of meditation twice a day, just in terms of preparing myself daily and in general. I do some tapping with intentions and affirmations. I do about 20 minutes of a vocal warm-up alongside another 10 minutes or so of extrinsic unloading. So all of these muscles along the neck and such, when we're as humans, we get emotion, at least for me, my jaw, my throat, my neck gets, tight, and so I need to make sure that I am consciously, unloading that every day, before the show, and I also get in usually it's about 30, but depending on what's happening in the day, I get in about a 10 to 30-minute physical warm-up, usually yoga and maybe some physical therapy kind of exercises, to prepare my body because there are stairs on the set, behind the set that I am running up and down during the show and to just try to protect my body and prepare myself for that. And I usually connect with at least a few, if not all of the castmates before the show and set an intention, God, Goddess, Universe, Source, beings of unconditional love. I try to make it broad just for whatever energies are out there. My intention is to channel the story and the music with as much authenticity uh, that I can, and in the hopes that it will touch the lives of others in the audience for the greater good. So that's how I do to prepare for this show, like on a general basis. And otherwise, I have experienced a lot of grief, particularly over the pandemic. I lost a lot of people without much human touch or closure. And so I do have an understanding of the depths of grief, not from a child, but I can tap into that for Diana's journey. I also grew up with a bipolar father, and though it was very different from Diana's experience with the delusional episodes and such, I know from a lived experience what it's like to have somebody who has some erratic emotional behavior, impulse issues, and such. So that also has helped prepare me to dive in with some lived experience from a different perspective, more of a Natalie perspective than a Diana. But I also draw on that each day.
Wow, Elena, I don't know why I expected you to be like, "Oh, I just drink some tea and
I do that too.
I do
I
some
drink some stress relief
stretching."
tea. I do sometimes take some Lavella, which is like a lavender for calming.
Oh my goodness. Well, having seen Next to Normal, the way that you're describing how you prepare for this character makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that I loved about your character so much is your expression and the way that you physically showed up and carried out this role. You are in it, and it really brings the storyline to life. Your ability to connect with each cast member on stage is really remarkable. So it's cool to know that you put so much thought and intention behind the character. I don't know why I'm surprised though, because your background is very impressive. You have a huge resume. You have been in some amazing productions, including like West Side Story and the reprisal of that on Broadway. But you're from Colorado originally. So tell me about your journey as an artist and what it feels like to be back in your home state.
I grew up from the middle of 1st grade. My dad was in the Air Force, and so I fell in love with musical theater in England, when we were stationed there after Germany and such, and he retired in Colorado Springs, Peterson Air Force Base. He also worked at the Air Force Academy. My mother, as a civilian, worked, on both Peterson Air Force Base and even Fort Carson Army Base, so I grew up here. And from starting dance when I was 6, almost 7 years old, and doing musical theater classes at the Fine Arts Center in Colorado Springs or the Bemis Art School, and also being a part of the Colorado Springs Fine Arts Center repertory theater company, both the youth and then the semi-professional company. I grew up as an artist here. Betsy McClanahan had Attitudes Dance Center. Now she runs, I think it's called the Kaleidoscope Project with the Imagination Celebration, but originally it was called Attitudes Dance Center, and we had the Rocky Mountain Dance Ensemble. I got to be a part of the youth ensemble and also the company with Jan Johnson and Ormayo Modern Company. And I got my Bachelor of Arts in Musical Theater with an emphasis in acting from the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. And yeah, I I moved to New York right after a few months after I graduated from UNC in
Mhm.
2003, and coming back here, this is the 3rd. I had done a couple of, like, corporate gigs, just, like, more like pop, R&B, contemporary gigs here with, one of the local producers, Kenny Moten. He's wonderful, and I got to come back to do 2 shows at the Arvada Center. I was the fairy godmother in Cinderella, and then I came back to have a dream role fulfilled as Princess Winifred in Once Upon a Mattress, and then to come back now and do this, in my opinion, one of the most challenging female roles in contemporary musical theater history is really special because I grew up as an artist here. So to come and get to challenge myself vocally, emotionally, as an actor, movement-wise is special. There's also pressure, like, "Oh gosh, am I gonna do Colorado proud?" But it feels really great to come back here. I've had theater professors. Just the other day, my high school I went to 2 high schools in Colorado Springs. I went to Widefield High School and then Mesa Ridge High School. I was the first graduating class of Mesa Ridge High School, which
Oh,
feels like
wow.
such a grandma thing to say, but it's true. And just the other day, my Widefield sophomore year theater teacher, Scott Loring, was here with his wife. One of my musical theater professors, John Leonard from the University of Northern Colorado, and my script analysis and acting teacher, Mary Shetler, has come here. I've had some college classmates come, and a variety, even some colleagues that I used to do community theater come and see this work, and to just get to reconnect with the Colorado scene, from teachers to colleagues. It's really special.
You have a very extensive Colorado history then. I mean, that's great that you grew up here. You mentioned Kenny Moten. He's amazing.
Yeah, I
And the
just
Arvada Center is just great. I really love Colorado for its arts and entertainment scene. So it's so cool that you can contribute to that.
yeah, As a teenager and not having, had as much travel or exposure to other things, it can be easy to dismiss, "Oh, yeah, okay, Colorado, yeah, whatever, how is it even good?" But now I'm really proud I've had 6 Broadway shows, I have done numerous readings and concerts and things regionally, and to come back here and to just really notice and reflect how rich the arts are and how supported and
Mhm.
it's beautiful. Colorado arts are really thriving, and I'm
Yeah.
really proud to see that and to feel like I'm a part of that and to come back, for the show.
Well, thank you. I'm not a part of it, but I feel very connected to it. So thank you because it's a huge compliment to Colorado and the effort that so many people put into keeping the landscape really alive and thriving. But I do have a question about you going to New York. What gave you the courage to do that at such a young age? And what was that journey like when you were first getting started?
Before I graduated, well, during my graduation, really, I had, auditioned for Brooklyn the Musical. They were having their out of town tryout in Denver. I think it was oh gosh, it's been so long. The Denver Civic Center, I think, and I was hired as a pit singer, and I covered Eden Espinosa and Karen Olivo, and so to have that experience with these professionals while I was going to school on Mondays, I had to finish all of my finals early, and then I was commuting back and forth for rehearsals here. I graduated, and that night, I came back to do a show, and my parents' gift to me was a hotel room, but I learned about some things like, "Oh, tell me where to go in New York." And, at the time, Craigslist was more prominent for finding housing. So I connected with this Jamaican woman, who had a space. We had a phone call, and we arranged for me to be her roommate, and I got a flight ticket, I knew I had a sublet, and I went. It was August 15th, and then my flight was delayed, of 2003 because it was the blackout in New York at the time. But
Oh,
I went, and I've fulfilled some dreams, and I still have dreams to fulfill. Did I answer your question?
yeah, absolutely, and I'd say you definitely fulfilled some dreams, that's so cool, and it speaks to how much safer the world felt in 2003, I think, the fact that you had a Craigslist phone call and went out there.
Yeah. I
That's so
also
brave.
I also did technically have a job because in college I worked for Starbucks. And so I just found something. I was like, okay, theater district. I called a Starbucks. I requested a transfer. I had no real idea of where that was, but I at least had a job that I was able to go to. They never
That's
did adjust
awesome.
my pay rate from Colorado to New York, but
Uh-oh.
after 3 months, I made my off-Broadway debut in Boobs the Musical: The World According to Ruth Wallace, which sounds crazy, but is actually just there was this woman, Ruth Wallace, who wrote double entendre songs in the 1950s and 60s, and it was like a silly revue show. So I retired from Starbucks. I was technically also working a second job at a skin and body shop called H2O Plus and about to work a third as like a coat check, but then I got my off-Broadway debut.
Congratulations, that's really a fantastic journey. I want to dig into the character of Diana for a bit. And, you said that it's a complex role. She's carrying a lot of grief and dealing with mental health issues. But when it comes to playing Diana, how do you approach the emotional weight that role carries? And when you're having to engage with an audience who is probably feeling a range of emotions while watching this story, especially if they're not familiar with the storyline, how do you take that on and approach it with, or do you approach it with any sort of like sensitivity, or do you just go full throttle and people just have to experience the journey with you?
Well, like I said, in terms of my general preparation before the show, all of the meditation and the vocal preparation and et cetera, um, I I just have to get my instrument ready first. And in rehearsal, we did a lot of table work, so script analysis, discussions on what we thought the writers might have meant, what we think that the story means to us now. And while we set the story, we agreed that it felt around 2013. That's what it felt right for us from like 2013 to 14. And we talked about what resources were there available then. So I just do my best to trust the work that we did across the table. in the rehearsal room. We check in with each other in general, on a daily basis, and then we just tell the story. I have no control however people are going to take it, and it's easy to get, I certainly get in my head, recovering people pleaser. So I hope that people can get something positive from this story despite it being challenging. But I just do my best to ground myself in the work that we've done and do my best to be as authentic each day as I can. And yeah, we hear sniffles. There's been some people who actually even might occasionally call out. I've heard it like, F you, doctor. Like people who are, probably saying what they never got to say to their doctor or whatever. And there's a variety of things going on, which can be, then you have to like, oop, bring it back into the work that's happening. Um, but yeah, just doing the best that I can and that we can to be authentic and hope that people receive whatever they need. And so far, we've been getting some really beautiful feedback. Just yesterday, I happened to go say hello to a couple of people that I knew, and there was a family behind me that wanted to get a picture, and then they were saying that they had seen a production of Next to Normal in Little Rock at some point and then saw it was here and they were so excited to come back. And I was just, sharing that, yeah, I'm grateful that this can help create some community conversations around the importance of mental health and getting support. And they agreed, and they were asking me kind of a similar question, oh, how do you, do this role? And I mentioned, hey, I grew up with a bipolar father, so I have some understanding. And they were like, oh, yeah, or us too, like a bipolar parent. And then their mother was like, yeah, me. And she had a pillow, and maybe she had there for some support, but they really related and they appreciated having this piece of theater that helps them feel less alone. And I've heard that a lot. I've gotten Instagram messages or people who come up to me after the show if I happen to, go up in the theater way. And that's been a huge message that we've seen, that people are
Yeah.
feeling less alone.
That gave me goosebumps that there's so many people who relate on so many different levels. For me, I think when I was watching, the memory loss part was a huge piece for me. And, we think about like Alzheimer's and dementia and different issues, but we don't necessarily consider the impact through younger ages or in different situations. And so that was one that stood out to me. Another thing you just said was really important, that you sat with the cast and determined what time frame you thought the storyline would take place in, because from 2013 to now there's been a lot of advances, and so we wouldn't necessarily relate in the same way that we would back then. So that's neat.
It's interesting. I can't remember if that's put in the director notes or not, but hopefully anybody who's seen the show or is going to see the show knows that it is, at least for us, set in a different time frame. I mean, the show happened was on Broadway 2009 to 2011, I believe it was. So we've had so many advances in mental health care. This is at a time when there was not as much conversation as there is now. Like, I think it is super important. I think everybody should have a therapist, an outside witness to help process, the things, especially in these times where we have such an overload of information and misinformation and we're overstimulated and exhausted. I think it's important that everyone gets involved in some kind of mental health support. It's just
Mhm.
like going to the gym. You make sure that your muscles and your joints are good and mobile, and we also need to take our brains to the gym to make sure that we're clearing any mind waste out. But actually, this leads me to something that I'll share just from my perspective, if people are interested, because we don't know what happens to Diana at the end.
Mhm.
Um, and from my perspective, my Diana, what I see. You see her, there's a little Easter egg. Actually, I'm gonna pop away and grab something really quickly. So not everyone's going to see this at the end, but our director had recommended a book called An Unquiet Mind by Kay Redfield Jamison, who is a practitioner. She supports people with bipolar disorder, manic depression. She also is somebody who's experienced it on a deep level and describes what it's like from the inside out. And at the end, I come on as if, her Natalie mentions that she has gone to be with her parents for a bit. And so I've got this in my hand at the end. And some
Mhm.
people in the front row may or may not see it, but I feel like, oh, she's discovered this book and feels less alone. I think that Diana goes and actually gets grief counseling to process this unfelt
Mm.
grief, or, it hasn't completely been felt. I feel like she gets support in that. She's also somewhere between 30s and 40s according to, the character breakdown, and
Mhm.
that's when women tend to start perimenopause, which has a shift
Mm.
in hormones and also emotions. So between the
Right.
grief, perimenopausal hormones, when she started to have this diagnosis, she was probably experiencing postpartum depression and then lost her baby. So I feel like
Oh
she
gosh,
deals
yeah.
actually deals with the root causes that in our modern even now in our modern medical system, we do not get to address,
Right.
especially with women. We are so often dismissed as having anxiety or whatever, and then we can be medicated, and then those medications have symptoms, and then you take medications for the symptoms that you didn't have before. And
Mm.
medication can be very important. And if we're not dealing with the root causes, then we may be taking medications that we don't need. So I think that for the first time, instead of having Dan, who is doing the best he can,
Yeah.
but is dealing in like repressive coping, he's shoving things down himself and he's doing the best he can. But Diana, in my opinion of this story, has not had the agency to really make the health decisions for herself. I think she just takes the time to deal with the root problems and then find what she really needs.
I'm so glad you shared that because after the production, my thought initially was I don't like not knowing what the resolution was. And then I had to remind myself it's next to normal, not everything's back to normal or absolutely normal.
Yeah.
But it really does leave room for audience engagement and for audiences to interpret the ending or the story and fill in the blanks and make sense of Diana's journey after we see her on stage. So I'm glad that you shared that. One of the things about mental health that we're doing less of now is shying away from conversations about it. And I think our willingness to be open and talk about mental health and talk about grief, it can be healing to a degree. Why do you think it's important that we're able to have these conversations and embed these messages in a show like Next to Normal right now?
Well, it's so important for us to talk about how we feel because when we don't and we're just ignoring things, that's when we have breakdowns.
Mhm.
Um, Grief, rage, and fear often don't need fixing. They need to be honored, they need to be felt, they need to be named and witnessed and supported. When we repress our body's natural, healthy emotion, the emoting mechanisms, it leads to dysfunction in our body. We have to feel to heal. Um, our bodies are incredibly intelligent, and our modern coping mechanisms of just like pushing through, stuffing down, sucking it up, so to speak, which is thankfully starting to be recognized as unhealthy, these things are thwarting the wisdom of our bodies and keeping us from being safe and stable. I've seen articles and such online where it shows that crying can help us lower stress because it removes cortisol from the body. Our bodies are so smart that if you need to cry, oh, cortisol is collecting and it's getting out.
Wow.
And, so many people, it's like, oh, even from when we're babies, oh, shush, 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 don't cry. No, that is our body's wisdom. Our bodies know how to get rid of the stuff we don't need. So,
Mm.
hey, if you need to cry, cry.
My last question about Next to Normal is what is the most rewarding part for you in playing Diana?
Hmm. The most rewarding part for me in playing Diana is the feedback that I'm receiving from fans and audience members who are sharing that they feel less alone, they feel seen, they feel like they can have conversations because maybe they came with some family members, and it starts to spark a conversation about things that can feel uncomfortable or less common to talk about because we're still, even today, unwinding the stigma around mental illness and mental health. Even though all of us have dips in mental health on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, we have times that can, you never know when crisis or grief is going to happen. So the more we can create conversations and connection and feel less alone and just understand we have a range of emotions as human. They're all normal. We all experience them to different degrees. But yeah, that's the most rewarding part is to know that this is a part of creating a ripple of conversations and helping people feel less alone. I felt, yeah, I'm going to get teary. I felt so touched by the audience members who have happened to catch me and let me know and thank me. Oh, thank you for telling the story. I feel less alone.
Audiences have until May 3rd to see this show on stage at the Wolf Theater, and I just after seeing it myself, I cannot recommend it enough. I think it's definitely a must see, and I think that your performances are remarkable. So thank you so much for bringing all that you have to the stage every night and for continuing to do so. And thank you for taking time to speak with me.
Well, thank you for your kind words and for giving this show and these topics a platform to be heard so that hopefully, whether or not you get to see the show, you can feel less alone.
Love that. Thanks, Aléna.
Thank you, Ruby. I appreciate you.
If you enjoyed my conversation with Aléna, be sure to catch her in Next to Normal at Denver Center for the Performing Arts from now through May 3rd. Next to Normal isn't your normal musical. It's an experience that stays with you. The subject matter and score are equally impressive, and its honesty opens the door to conversations that matter so much. Get your tickets, bring someone with you, and be part of a story that reminds us of the importance of connection, compassion, and understanding. Thank you for watching this episode of The Exchange. I hope you'll subscribe for more conversations featuring real stories, real people, and real purpose. I'm Ruby Jones, and I'll see you next time.